Hello everyone, my name is Mariana Jaimes and today I will be demonstrating the information I have gathered about my turbulent home country of Venezuela. In this presentation, I will be covering a few topics to better acquaint you with the great country of Venezuela and all it has to offer. I will be discussing a few tidbits of basic information, the political situation from the very beginning until now, the migration crisis that has plagued the country, as well as the many Venezuelans who face discrimination due to their gender identity and sexual orientation. I myself was in Venezuela recently, therefore, throughout this presentation, I will also add a few first-hand experiences from my time there. So, first of all, what is Venezuela like? And what should you know? Well, Venezuela has a population of around 32 million people, which is roughly around 0.42% of the entire world's population. Its capital is Caracas, which is located in the northern part of the country. The current form of currency is the Bolívar Soberano, which translates to sovereign Bolívar. This new difference knocks off 5 zeros from the original price with the Bolívar Fuerte, which this change came because the government wanted to combat the country's inflation. The official language is Spanish, however there are 25 indigenous languages, most of which belong to the three linguistic families Cariban, Arawak, and Chibcha. The ethnic composition of the country is fairly diverse. It consists of an approximately 65% mestizo or mulatto mestizo population, 20% claiming European lineage, and 10% African ancestry, as well as a small native indigenous population. Lastly, the grand majority of the population are Roman Catholic. Granted, there are small groups of Jews, Muslims, and Protestants, which makes the country a bit diverse. Now, in order to understand how Venezuela came to be the country that it is today, one must first note how it all began. So I will talk a little bit about its political history. In 1498, Christopher Columbus came on shore to the great lands inhabited by the Carib, Arawak, and Chibcha people. The following year, Alonso de Ojeda, a Spanish conquistador, also visited the great land and decided to name it Venezuela, meaning Little Venice due to the small huts all over the place. However, colonization did not commence until 1521. This lasted until 1810 when Venezuela finally claimed its independence from Spain. Then, in 1821, Simón Bolívar liberated Venezuela, along with many other Latin American countries. Following that, in 1829, General Páez led Venezuela in its separation from Gran Colombia, a landmass as seen there encompassed by Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador. That same year, he exiled Bolívar. Venezuela then had to endure various caudillos for many years. Caudillos are military dictators, and of whom General Páez can be considered the first. After many, many years, the first Democratic president, Romulo Gallegos, was inaugurated on February 15, 1948, but was quickly overthrown in the following 8 months by Marco Pérez Jiménez, another military dictator. Now, following those unique origins, I will talk about one of the former presidents who basically made Venezuela what it is today. The man known as Hugo Chavez. He is Nicolas Maduro's predecessor. He was president from 1999 until he passed away in 2013. His ideology was coined Chavismo, and it consisted of nationalism, a centralized economy, and a strong military actively engaged in public projects, which is what made him so well liked by a large population in the very beginning. However, in his early days, he staged a coup of President Carlos Andrés Pérez's government, but the rebellion disintegrated fairly quick. He was then in prison until 1994 for his actions, and President Pérez chose to drop charges due to Chavez's growing support from the common people. Following this, Chavez decided to create the political party Movimiento de la Quinta República, Movement of the Fifth Republic, and later won the 1998 election with a majority vote, 56% to be precise. During his first year in office, he achieved an 80% approval rating due to his widely popular platform consisting of the end of corruption, increased spending on social programs, and redistribution of the country's oil wealth. He also changed the constitution to have unchecked power over the other branches of government. He alienated the United States and other countries in the West by forging close ties with Iraq, Iran, and Libya. In 2007, Chavez added various amendments to the Constitution to strengthen the executive branch's power. His power. Some of the amendments included greater control over the central bank, which allowed for the seizing of property without a legal ruling, as well as an indefinite re-election. And while this did not sit well with the Venezuelan people, he named Nicolás Maduro as his successor in December 2012 following his fourth cancer surgery. He passed shortly after. Well, you have probably heard of these two names on the news fairly recently, and that is because the political climate of Venezuela has been turbulent to say the least. One of the most recent issues regarded the legitimacy of Nicolás Maduro as president. This year, on January 23rd, Juan Guaidó, the leader of the opposition-controlled National Assembly, declared himself interim president, and then swore himself in as president, which was widely recognized by various nations. Maduro then claimed that Guaidó was planning a coup and demanded his arrest. This issue has led to various events, such as humanitarian aid and talk of foreign intervention. For instance, the Red Cross recently sent its first humanitarian aid shipment, which included medication and supplies for the various people who require medical attention, but the lack of resources impair their treatment. Also, Canada placed sanctions on 43 members of Maduro's government, which included the freezing of those members' assets and the prevention of conducting business with Canada. One of those members was Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza, who is held responsible for the deteriorating condition of the country. Furthermore, a $31.5 million grant was provided by the Global Concessional Financing Facility to Colombia to accommodate Venezuelan migrants and refugees. Immigration. One of the many major issues facing the country is that of immigration. Due to the harsh living conditions, millions of Venezuelans are forced to flee the country. This situation has been deemed as one of the worst migration crises in Latin America. Approximately 2.3 million Venezuelans, if not more, have emigrated throughout the past few years. This constitutes a large portion of the population and has led to a 900% increase in Venezuelans living in other South American countries, according to the UN. But why are so many people leaving, you may ask? Well, there are various push factors in play as to the reason for this mass exodus. For instance, doctors throughout the country have claimed that over 50 patients have died directly due to the nearly daily blackouts. There's a lack of vaccines available. I know this from personal experience because my family has to cross the border into Cúcuta, Colombia, which is close to my city, to have my 1-year-old godson vaccinated. There just aren't any vaccines available in our city. And approximately 78% of hospitals report a lack of medicine available. And let's not forget, this is a country with an inflation rate at approximately 2,600%. Now, I also want to make a quick mention of the fact that many borders have been closed following the Venezuela Aid Live concert held in Cúcuta. Those who attended the concert had to return to Venezuela through the trails called trochas, many of which are similar to this. I myself arrived from Venezuela last month and had to cross on this same exact trail. This is on the border with the Colombian city of Cúcuta. And when the river grows, no one's able to pass through. But when it's decent, in order for one to pass, one must pay 5,000 Colombian pesos, approximately $1.58 per person. And I would like to make a quick mention of how the Venezuelan people often don't carry bolívares, but instead carry Colombian pesos and American dollars as forms of payment. Anyways, throughout the trails, there are armed men who work with those collecting the money, colectivos, making sure that no one is robbed. And trust me, it's not from the kindness of their heart. It's to secure the path to have returning customers. A few days before I had to cross this trail, I heard stories of a lady who was robbed and shot on a trail near this one. Anyways, once one passes the river and is on Colombian ground, you are welcomed by the sight of armed Colombian police and hundreds of Venezuelan stands selling foods and services, such as carrying your luggage across this trocha. Speaking of immigration, a large portion of the Venezuelan population has left the country due to the discrimination they faced while living in Venezuela. With so many issues facing the country, primarily economic, LGBTQ+ rights are shoved to the bottom of the pile of priorities, as seen with the reduction or elimination of funding for such organizations. Furthermore, the government's Family Food Bank scheme also discriminates against the LGBTQ+ population. This scheme causes markets to utilize a biometric reading machine that identifies customers and keeps track of how many products they purchase in order to prevent hoarding. And I'd like to mention how this is fairly common because one day you'll see a product listed at a certain price, and then you might go that same place for that same product the following day, and it can be like twice as expensive. So people tend to buy in bulk, and the biometric reading machine is put in place to prevent such things. Anyways, this scheme affects same-sex couples because same-sex couples are not considered families, which affects the number of goods that they're able to purchase as a household. Additionally, trans people are discriminated against due to the fact that the government does not allow them to attain identification cards or documents that correspond to their proper gender identity. Therefore, without proper identification, the process of purchasing just becomes that much more complicated. Additionally, many people, including trans people, are in danger due to the worsening conditions of the economy. There has been an increase in human trafficking of primarily trans women, but also includes cis women and young men who are forced into sex work in Spain, Panama, Colombia, Dominican Republic, and other countries. Furthermore, the violence against this group is simply shocking. Colombia's biggest LGBTQ rights group, Colombia Diversa, who welcomes Venezuelan immigrants, states that attacks against the community are increasing at alarming rates, especially for trans women. It is evident that there is a lack of medications throughout the country. However, the lack of antiretroviral drugs is unbelievable. Hundreds of Venezuelans are dying due to the lack of antiretroviral drugs available in Venezuela. The UN reports that in 2016 there were 120,000 Venezuelans living with HIV. And apparently, one of the only ways to attain these drugs is through non-governmental organizations or outside donations, according to Cesar Sequeira, founder of Alianza Lambda de Venezuela, a Venezuelan LGBTQ+ advocacy group. Many Venezuelans are forced to migrate to Colombia and other countries in order to receive proper treatment. However, sometimes they end up in places where there is poor HIV care, and thus they have to wait a long time to get assessments for medicine, and it often leads to AIDS. In 2017, in Barranquilla, 8 gay Venezuelan men died of AIDS while waiting to be assessed to get their medicine. There have been attempts to alleviate the situation, however, they're not always successful. The PAHO acquired $4.9 million to purchase antiretroviral drugs, and UNAIDS, the Joint United Nations Program on HIV and AIDS, sent $100,000 for the distribution of the drugs to people living with HIV and AIDS. It successfully sent its first shipment of the antiretroviral drug tenofovir timivudine and TLD on December 23, 2018. But shortly after, the police raided the building where the drugs were stored, and they confiscated the donated medication and even arrested 3 human rights activists who work for the organization. My final thoughts and reflections regarding Venezuela's deteriorating condition is that one of its only solutions is to remove the corrupt government that is in charge and allow for the real president, Juan Guaido, to finally take charge. Humanitarian aid is required to improve the conditions of the Venezuelan people because medication is required in hospitals, teachers are needed in schools, affordable food is needed in stores, blackouts need to stop, and a true leader is needed for order. Once Maduro and his government fall, the country can rebuild itself from the ashes. Once they fall and aid comes in, people will stop leaving the country, and people will stop dying from starvation and lack of medication. For now, the only hope there is foreign intervention. In conclusion, I am thankful to have been able to learn so much about my home country through this project. Despite living through it firsthand, it was still shocking to learn the implications of what occurs back home on a daily basis. From the mass exodus of Venezuelans to the discrimination that many of those face simply because of their gender identity and sexual orientation. While I recently returned from there, my plans to go back are stronger than ever. Hopefully, with time, the country will once again flourish and prosper. The country is likely to go through an intense chain reaction, starting with the fall of the corrupt government, the return of those who left, investment in infrastructure, and possibly tourism. Because, let me tell you, Venezuela has views like no other, such as Angel Falls, Orinoco Delta, Los Roques, Cuevas de Cabac, so much more. One day the country will be one day the country will be remembered for its strong people and breathtaking scenery. These are my works cited, and thank you for your time.